Hey guys, it's Ellen and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to give you 5 top things to avoid when painting with watercolor. 5 tips on how to avoid some of these things, like overworking, making things muddy, not to make them muddy, avoiding, cauliflower blooms, why paper is important, and you'll see why not going dark too early is a problem, and lastly, what to think about when you're painting. I go over all these things that are pretty much people come on my channel and ask me about that are frustrated with watercolor. So hopefully this tutorial will help you figure out what the problem is that you're going through and maybe avoid it. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section. Also, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And if you haven't hit the bell notification, please do so you know my tutorial's up. Also, check out my Patreon. I have ad-free videos, traceables, exclusive tutorials on Thursdays, and a live stream on the top tier once a month. The exclusives are not on YouTube. They have traceables with them. I go more in depth, so it's a little more enhanced than the YouTube. You can check it out right up here. Boop, the little eye icon. So without further ado, let's get going on trying to fix what's going on. The first problem that you're going to encounter is for mistakes is not having a solid gradient wash and creating cauliflower blooms. People start off by using a skinny brush like this Princeton long round. They make an outline and then go ahead and try and fill it in with the brush. You're constantly grabbing paint and going back in. And if you're doing the outline, you're still doing the same thing. You're constantly grabbing the paint and going in and trying to fill in that circle because the brush is really just too small for this. And you'll notice as you go in and you add more paint to it that the pigment is going to be not consistent. It's not going to be this flat wash. It's going to have this inconsistencies all around. Now, if you grab a bigger brush like the Princeton 10 long round, again, make a lot of watered paint. You need to add a lot of paint and a lot of water to the paint. And then you can go ahead and fill it in. And see, you'll have a lot more paint. You can kind of just lift up the paint and then tap it on the paper towel, and then you'll have a serious flat wash. You won't have this line that's around it. You go ahead and mix it a little more. Again, doing this again. See how you just filling it on pretty fast because the brush itself is fairly large. It holds a lot of paint, and all you have to do is just tap off that little edge, and then you're done, and you have a nice consistency. The rest of them will have more of a hard edge and maybe some cauliflower edges to them. The second thing, and the most important thing, which I talk about often, is the paper you use. So here I'm showing a demonstration of how if you're going to paint a nice wash, pretty flower on really cheap like Strathmore paper, and what will happen to it. So you notice that it kind of sits on the top of the page. You go to bleed in the deeper tones on the inside, of the flower, and it's just going to sit there. It's just going to lay there. It's not going to slowly bleed a nice little pretty color in there. Now on the right, I have Arches 100% cotton cold press paper. Now here I am putting in the wash of the color of the flower, just kind of filling that in with my number 8 Princeton long round brush. And you'll notice as I go to grab the deeper colors that it just blends seamlessly right into the flower. There's none of this heavy, thick, topical, dark wash sitting on top of the other wash. It's slowly bleeding in because the 100% cotton paper is perfect for that. It just soaks up the water easily. It doesn't let it sit there. The other papers just see how the paint just sits on top of the paper. This one just blends really nicely. So you want to save this paper for really nice paintings that you want to do, and you want to play around with color, maybe composition with the cheaper paper, but the cheaper paper is always going to have that paint just sitting on top. It's not going to have this beautiful blend that you see with the Arches paper. It's just not going to work that way. It's meant to the 100% cotton paper is just meant to have this beautiful bleeds to it, and you're never going to get that same, you're never going to achieve the same quality on the cheaper paper. So it's my number 2 tip, but I actually say sometimes it's my number 1 tip. Another big issue is gradient washes or washes into each other that get muddy. So here, for example, I have a nice bright pink and a yellow. I'll take my pink on my Princeton 8 long round, and I'll kind of go like this to get the nice color here, and then I'll grab some water, clean it off, grab some nice clear water, as you can see. Grab a water jar here, tap my paper towel, and I'll add a little water to this, going downward. Clean up again, paper towel, and there's a nice gradient wash. All right? Now if you want to grab the yellow and mix it in with it, Here's the yellow. You flip it around. Right? Same thing. Clean off your brush. Tap it. Clean off your brush. Tap it. And slowly work your way into each other, making a nice blend. If you go too fast, you're going to create something like this. You're going to go yellow, red, pink, real fast, you know, maybe you add your water. But then you go and grab your yellow too soon, and you come and turn around. And you don't take off the water, and then you've got this weird blend, and it doesn't bleed nicely, see? Because you didn't slowly take off the water, you slowly clean your brush. Again, another thing you can do is put the pink down. Again, grab some water, do the gradation, and if you're very nervous about the yellow, we will blow dry it. We'll have to take out the noise in this part. You can dry it and then go back in with your yellow. Again, flipping it around. And then clean off your brush. Slowly grab the water off your yellow, and then you can blend it nice and pretty again. See that? Much pretty, kind of a mess in here. You know, you go back again, it gets darker. Clean off your brush. Slowly work the bleed in. And that's how you create a nice clean wash as opposed to making it muddy, because you don't want that muddy wash. You want a nice soft wash, and that's the way you do it. Another big tip is that people go too dark too early. So what do I mean by that? So here we have, let's just use the pink, and I'll mix up some pretty yellow to make it more of a blushy kind of tone. So you've got this color that's mixed in. It's pretty dark, right? I might tap off the color because there's too much excess. And you're going to do a nice pretty flower. And you're making the lines here first. And you've gotten too dark. You know, for your highlights, all your stuff, you painted the dark color highlight first. People just go right in with the dark if they're looking at a flower, right? With watercolor, you really need to not do this, because what happens is, if you do the dark, when you go to paint the lighter tones, so now I'm going to water this color down to get the lighter tone, right? And just keep watercolor, you add water to make it light, and I will tap off the excess. You're going in here, and what's going to happen is you're going to activate that pink that you just put down, and it's going to kind of bleed into it. And that's kind of what you didn't want to happen. See, now it's just one big blob. See, as you put the color in, it's now bled into it. It's not pretty, it's a blob. Which means you have to go even darker here, and you didn't really want to do that. You wanted to make it a little pretty flower. So then you would take, the way you should do it, is you water down your color here. It's pretty blush. I like to tap off the excess. I'll add even more water. So we'll put in the petal, really pale. And I'll leave an outline and leave some highlights, but you still have a very pale color here, blush. And of course you have to wait till it dries in between. Watercolor requires some layering. If you don't do the layering, it's a blob. You see, we're going to let that dry. Once it's dry, you can go back in with your darker tone. Again, if it's too much water, you just tap it off your paper towel. And you can do this several layers. I tend to do my flowers in several layers of water consistency and color. Now you're not making this one big blob. You're really making a nice, beautiful, delicate. It's just a tone above, a couple of tones above the value of the bottom first layer. And I'll keep playing around with that. I'll add even more paint with less water. Get even darker. I can bleed in. At this point, see, it's nice and wet still. I can bleed in an even darker tone which is basically the pink and the yellow, hardly even mixed with water. Just right in here, and it's because it's kind of damp, it will bleed nicely. Again, because this paper is harsh. But you see how light I went, and then I did like a second above that value, and then I go and add in some delicate touches with the dark. And it's just a much prettier looking flower. I'm going in and adding some dark touches. The difference is extreme, you know, with the two and how they look. One looks like a blob, one has this beautiful, sweet, delicate nature to it. And then you can put some more of the values. See, I'm tapping off the excess water. Always good to have like a towel close by to do this. This is another key trick, is always tapping. I'm always tapping. If you see my brush come out of view, focus, I'm tapping and I talk about this. But now this flower looks a little more realistic, has a little more life to it. This is just a blob. You literally have to go back in with the dark yellow and pink and go darker. And so that's a different look altogether. It doesn't have the same sweetness as this one. And that's what if you're going for that look, you need to avoid to go dark first. Same thing with leaves. I'll put in a much lighter tone leaf first. These pretty petals, leaves. Even the stems, I'll start off light. And when they dry, I can go back in with some darker greens. Mixing up some darker greens here. And I can just bleed that. Play around with all that. It just has a more sweet quality to it. It doesn't look overworked. You don't want it to look overworked. You want it to look nice and natural and pretty. And that's what you're going for. You take your time with it. And grabbing some darker tones. Slowly working them in. I don't go really fast with that. I'll take even darker tones. See how I'm slowly kind of putting them in. Get even darker. You can, also people ask me many times how to fix that if it's gone in. You clean off your brush. Make sure it's kind of dry with a little bit of water, and you kind of lift it. So this is lifting. And tapping it back on your paper towel. So you're removing the paint. There are ways to fix it if you do make the mistake. It won't look the same, but you can still kind of fix it. And then you can go back in and add in a pretty light color. It will take some time just to remove and lift, but it's doable. I see, grabbing more water, lifting the paint, even on the edge. And that's how you would fix that. And now it's gotten lighter, and you could go back in and add some lighter tones. So that's how I would do that. It's all a process. Watercolor is a process. It takes several steps. It's different than other mediums where you can add lighter tones on top. Like almost light white tones on top. You have to do the opposite. Start off light, then go dark. Now see, because we lifted, it wasn't one wash of color, you can kind of see the separation of the pigments. It's not going to be a problem if you don't really mind that, but if you really wanted a serious botanical, it would be. So that's why you have to wash the consistency of the watercolor on the paintbrush. All right, we're moving on. My last big tip would be to think about what you're going to do. Your composition, how you're going to place things, the values of your colors, all that nonsense before you even get started. So maybe you would have to draw out some florals in position. I would take a pencil, figure it out. Sometimes I like to draw florals just freely. Sometimes I plan them out because I want to figure out where I want the composition to go. It's a good thing to plan a little bit, you know, and then you're going to plan the light source. Is it coming from here? Is it coming from here? All that good stuff. Paper quality, obviously a good thing. If you don't need to have, you know, beautiful bleeds and layering and glazing, you don't need to have arched paper if you want to just play around just to see what's going on. So here I'll make sometimes I make a little color card of the tones and the values and the colors that I'll use. And then from there, I'll just go in and I'll play around with the flowers. You know, you start off, like I said, I would do the light, just kind of playing with the flowers and putting the colors in slowly, and then building from there. So here in this painting, I'm going to incorporate all the things I talked about. I'm going to be using arch paper. I'm going to be doing a light wash with the first round of flowers in here. You see I'm doing a light blush color tone. I'll be using certain brushes that make sense for this painting. I will be using my Princeton long round as opposed to a bigger, wider brush because I'm not doing a huge surface area. Again, I'll start off with the light color tones, and then I'll go slowly back in, and I'll dabble in with some dark tones and layer it, just slowly layer the whole entire painting, thinking about my composition the whole time. I have my color chart next to me with the colors I want to use. Keep me conscious of like that. And also, if you're working in a kind of constricted color palette, sometimes it helps you really concentrate on the values of the painting and the wash, as opposed to like getting bogged down with all these colors and where they're going to get placed. If you just limit yourself with just a few colors, then you're really focusing on a technique as opposed to, you know, getting yourself all confused with what goes where, what colors go where. So I'm just using some simple like blues with the blushes, and I'm just dabbing some of them in, playing around with that, and just something simple. You don't want to make yourself overwhelmed with color, composition, washes. Start off small. You're going to build slowly, and as you can see in this painting, I'm going to be building slowly with that secondary color value, then the third, and lastly I'll add in the deep tones, you know, that really enhance the flowers and the leaves and the stems and whatnot. It's just how I like to do watercolor. I like to build it slowly. If you go in too fast, too hot with the dark color, well, then you're limited and it becomes really cumbersome trying to get in those light tones. You got to do the light tones first and then go back in with the dark. Otherwise, it's a big dark mess, and then you're not happy, you're not satisfied with the way it's going to come out. So you see at the end, like I talk about, I'll add the deepest value. Just little touches at the end. I'm going to be outlining the flower and the inner circle here. And you're just building up slowly the deepest part. You don't want to go dark so fast, so quick. Slowly building it up so it's more delicate looking. Has a more refined look to it. You can add some touches on the outside and on the edge. Get a little bit darker here. Some of the petals. But I would suggest to do that. I see I've got that really dark. Once you've got in your other values, and you take your time, so it doesn't look muddy. And then you can always add in some other kind of value tones, like I added that blue like I show in here, right in here with the yellow. Instead of using black or brown, you can use blue color tones. It's in the orange family, this red, so it's a nice complementary. And you go in and add some bright yellow to the center. And some of the purples and the blues. So those are my top 5 tips for, you know, if you're having problems, those are the reasons why, maybe. If you guys like this tutorial, please, you know, hit the like button, share, subscribe if you haven't done already. And if you hadn't hit the bell notification button, please do so you know my tutorial is up. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. I hope these exercises help you, to figure out what's going on when you're watercolor and make it a little more enhanced and better. So thanks guys, take care, and I'll speak to you soon. So I hoped all these exercises helped you, figure out what's going on with your watercolor and help you understand how to fix it and avoid these kind of issues. It just takes time and practice, so don't get upset and fret about it. These things take time like anything, and it's always good to have a plan. Like I said, sometimes it might be better to plan out your colors like this and your execution, and the follow through with the blending, the washing, the types of brushes, the type of paper, all come into play when you're creating your watercolor. So if you like this video, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. If you haven't hit the bell notification button, please do so. And leave a comment below to tell me what your thoughts are on all these tips, if they helped you at all, if not at all. All right, guys, thank you so much. Thanks for stopping by. I'll speak to you soon.